Okay. There was once on a time, a poor man who could no longer support his only son. Then said the son, "Dear father, things go so badly with us that I am a burden to you. I would rather go away and see how I can earn my bread." So the father gave him his blessing, and with great sorrow they parted. At this time the king of a mighty empire was at war, and the youth entered his service, and with him went out to fight. And when he came before the enemy, there was a battle, and great danger, and it rained shot until his comrades fell on all sides. And when the leader also was killed, those left were about to take flight. But the youth stepped forth, spoke boldly to them, and cried, "We will not let our fatherland be ruined." Then the others followed him, and he pressed on and conquered the enemy. When the king heard that he owed the victory to him alone, he raised him above all the others, gave him great treasures, and made him the first in the kingdom. The king had a daughter who was very beautiful, but she was also very strange. She had made a vow to take no one as her lord and husband who did not promise to let himself be buried alive with her if she died first. "If he loves me with all his heart," said she, "of what use will life be to him afterwards?" On her side she would do the same, and if he died first, would go down to the grave with him. This strange oath had up to this time frightened away all wooers, but the youth became so charmed with her beauty that he cared for nothing, but asked her father for her. "But do you know what you must promise?" said the king. "I must be buried with her," he replied, "if I outlive her, but my love is so great that I do not mind the danger." Then the king consented, and the wedding was solemnized with great splendor. They lived now for a while happy and contented with each other, and then it befell that the young queen was attacked by a severe illness, and no physician could save her. And as she lay there dead, the young king remembered what he had been obliged to promise, and was horrified at having to lie down alive in the grave, but there was no escape. The king had placed sentries at all the gates, and it was not possible to avoid his fate. When the day came when the corpse was to be buried, he was taken down into the royal vault with it, and then the door was shut and bolted. Near the coffin stood a table on which were 4 candles, 4 loaves of bread, and 4 bottles of wine, and when this provision came to an end, he would have to die of hunger. And now he sat there full of pain and grief, ate every day only a little piece of bread, drank only a mouthful of wine, and nevertheless saw death daily drawing nearer. While he thus gazed before him, he saw a snake creep out of a corner of the vault and approach the dead body. And as he thought it came to gnaw at it, he drew his sword and said, "As long as I live, you shall not touch her," and hewed the snake in 3 pieces. After a time, a second snake crept out of the hole, and when it saw the other lying dead and cut in pieces, it went back, but soon came again with 3 green leaves in its mouth. Then it took the 3 pieces of the snake, laid them together as they ought to go, and placed one of the leaves on each wound. Immediately the severed parts joined themselves together, and the snake moved and became alive again, and both of them hastened away together. The leaves were left lying on the ground, and a desire came into the mind of the unhappy man who had been watching all this, to know if that the wondrous power of the leaves which had brought the snake to life again could not likewise be of service to a human being. So he picked up the leaves and laid one of them on the mouth of his dead wife, and the others on her eyes. And hardly had he done this than the blood stirred in her veins, rose into her pale face, and coloured it again. Then she drew breath, opened her eyes, and said, "Ah, God, where am I?" "You are with me, dear wife," he answered, and told her everything that had happened, and how he had brought her back to life again. Then he gave her some wine and bread, and when she had regained her strength, he raised her up, and they went to the door and knocked, and called so loudly that the sentries heard it and told the king. The king came down himself and opened the door, and there he found both strong and well, and rejoiced with them that now all sorrow was over. The young king, however, took the 3 snake leaves with him, gave them to a servant, and said, "Keep them for me carefully, and carry them constantly about you. Who knows in what trouble they may yet be of service to us?" A change had, however, taken place in his wife after she had been restored to life. It seemed as if all love for her husband had gone out of her heart. After some time, when he wanted to make a voyage over the sea to visit his old father, and they had gone on board a ship, she forgot the great love and fidelity which he had shown her, and which had been the means of rescuing her from death, and conceived a wicked inclination for the skipper. And once, when the young king lay there asleep, she called in the skipper and seized the sleeper by the head, and the skipper took him by the feet, and thus they threw him down into the sea. When the shameful deed was done, she said, "Now let us return home, and say that he died on the way. I will extol and praise you so to my father that he will marry me to you, and make the heir to his crown." But the faithful servant who had seen all that they did, unseen by them, and fastened a little boat from the ship, got into it, sailed after his master, and let the traitors go on their way. He fished up the dead body, and by the help of the 3 snake leaves which he carried about with him, and laid on the eyes and mouth, he fortunately brought the young king back to life. They both rowed with all their strength day and night, and their little boat flew so swiftly that they reached the old king before the others did. He was astonished when he saw them come alone, and asked what had happened to them. When he learned the wickedness of his daughter, he said, "I cannot believe that she has behaved so ill, but the truth will soon come to light," and bade both go into a secret chamber and keep themselves hidden from everyone. Soon after, the great ship came sailing in, and the godless woman appeared before her father with a troubled countenance. He said, "Why do you come back alone? Where is your husband?" "Ah, dear father," she replied, "I come home again in great grief. During the voyage, my husband became suddenly ill and died, and if the good skipper had not given me his help, it would have gone badly for me. He was present at his death and can tell you all," the king said. "I will make the dead come alive again," and opened the chamber and bade the 2 come out. When the woman saw her husband, she was thunderstruck and fell on her knees and begged for mercy. The king said, "There is no mercy. He was ready to die with you and restored you to life again, but you have murdered him in his sleep and shall receive the reward that you deserve." Then she was placed with her accomplice in a ship which had been pierced with holes and sent out to sea, where they soon sank amid the waves. Oh gosh, and that was the end of that story. That was interesting. Did you hear Bubba? Yeah, sometimes he gets a bit angry. I'll just take a quick break to hydrate. Oh. Hello, Dr. Wombat, and hello, Iso. Okay, right, next story. Oh, another snake story. The White Snake. A long time ago, there lived a king who was famed for his wisdom through all the land. Nothing was hidden from him, and it seemed as if news of the most secret things was brought to him through the air. But he had a strange custom. Every day after dinner, when the table was cleared and no one else was present, a trusty servant had to bring him one more dish. It was covered, however, and even the servant did not know what was in it, nor did anyone know, for the king never took off the cover to eat until he was quite alone. This had gone on for a long time, when one day the servant who took away the dish was overcome with such curiosity that he could not help carrying the dish into the room. When he had carefully locked the door, he lifted up the cover and saw a white snake lying on the dish. But when he saw it, he could not deny himself the pleasure of tasting it, so he cut off a little bit and put it into his mouth. No sooner had it touched his tongue than he heard a strange whispering of little voices outside his window. He went and listened, and then noticed that it was the sparrows who were chattering together and telling one another all kinds of things which they had seen in the fields and woods. Eating the snake had given him the power of understanding the language of animals. Now it so happened that on this very day the queen lost her most beautiful ring, and suspicion of having stolen it fell upon this trusty servant, who was allowed to go everywhere. The king ordered the man to be brought before him and threatened with angry words that unless he could, before the morrow, point out the thief, he himself should be looked upon as guilty and executed. In vain he declared his innocence. He was dismissed with no better answer. In his trouble and fear, he went down into the courtyard and thought about how to help himself out of this trouble. Now some ducks were sitting together quietly by a brook and taking their rest, and while they were making their feathers smooth with their bills, they were having a confidential conversation together. The servant stood by and listened. They were telling one another of all the places where they had been waddling about all the morning, and what good food they had found, and one said in a pitiful tone, "Something lies heavy in my stomach. As I was eating it in haste, I swallowed a ring which lay under the queen's window." The servant at once seized her by the neck, carried her to the kitchen, and said to the cook, "Here is a fine duck. Pray, kill her." "Yes," said the cook, and weighed her in his hand. "She has spared no trouble to fatten herself, and has been waiting to be roasted long enough." So he cut off her head, and as she was being dressed for the spit, the queen's ring was found inside her. The servant could now easily prove his innocence, and the king, to make amends for the wrong, allowed him to ask a favour, and promised him the best place in the court that he could wish for. The servant refused everything and only asked for a horse and some money for travelling, as he had a mind to see the world and go about a little. When his request was granted, he set out on his way, and one day came to a pond, where he saw 3 fishes caught in the reeds and gasping for water. Now, though it is said that fishes are mute, he heard them lamenting that they must perish so miserably, and, as he had a kind heart, he got off his horse and put the 3 prisoners back into the water. They quivered with delight, put out their heads, and cried to him, "We will remember you and repay you for saving us." He rode on, and after a while it seemed to him that he heard a voice in the sand at his feet. He listened and heard an ant-king complain, "Why cannot folks with their clumsy beasts keep off our bodies? That stupid horse with his heavy hoofs has been treading down my people without mercy." So the servant turned on to a side path, and the ant-king cried out to him, "We will remember you. One good turn deserves another." The path led him into a wood, and here he saw 2 old ravens standing by their nest, and throwing out their young ones. "Out with you, you idle, good-for-nothing creatures," cried they. "We cannot find food for you any longer. You are big enough and can provide for yourselves." But the poor young ravens lay upon the ground, flapping their wings and crying, "Oh, what helpless chicks we are! We must shift for ourselves, and yet we cannot fly. What can we do but lie here and starve?" So the good young fellow alighted and killed his horse with his sword, and gave it to them for food, when they came hopping up to it, satisfied their hunger, and cried, We will remember you. One good turn deserves another. And now he had to use his own legs, and when he had walked a long way, he came to a large city. There was a great noise and crowd in the streets, and a man rode up on a horseback, crying aloud, "The king's daughter wants a husband, but whoever pursues her hand must perform a hard task, and if he does not succeed, he will forfeit his life." Many had already made the attempt, but in vain. Nevertheless, when the youth saw the king's daughter, he was so overcome by her great beauty that he forgot all danger, went before the king, and declared himself a suitor. So, when he was led out to the sea, and a gold ring was thrown into it, in his sight, then the king ordered him to fetch this ring up from the bottom of the sea, and added, "If you come up again without it, you will be thrown in again and again until you perish amid the waves." All the people grieved for the handsome youth. Then they went away, leaving him alone by the sea. He stood on the shore and considered what he should do, when suddenly he saw 3 fishes come swimming towards him, and they were the very fishes whose lives he had saved. The one in the middle held a mussel in its mouth, which had laid on the shore at the youth's feet, and when he had taken it up and opened it, there lay the gold ring in its shell. Full of joy, he took it to the king and expected that he would grant him the promised reward. But when the proud princess perceived that he was not her equal in birth, she scorned him and required him first to perform another task. She went down into the garden and strewed with her own hands 10 sacks full of millet seed on the grass, and then said, "Tomorrow morning before sunrise, these must be picked up, with not a single grain missing." The youth sat down in the garden and considered how it might be possible to perform this task, but he could think of nothing. And there he sat sorrowfully, awaiting the break of day, when he should be led to death. But as soon as the first rays of the sun shone into the garden, he saw all the 10 sacks standing side by side, quite full, and not a single grain was missing. The ant king had come in the night with thousands and thousands of ants, and the grateful creatures had by great industry picked up all the millet seed and gathered them into the sacks. Presently the king's daughter herself came down into the garden, and was amazed to see that the young man had done the task that she had given him. But she could not yet conquer her proud heart, and said, "Although he has performed both tasks, he shall not be my husband until he has brought me an apple from the tree of life." The youth did not know where the tree of life stood, but he set out and would have gone on forever, as long as his legs would carry him, though he had no hope of finding it. After he had wandered through 3 kingdoms, he came one evening to a wood, and lay down under a tree to sleep. But he heard a rustling in the branches, and a golden apple fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 ravens flew down to him, perched themselves upon his knee, and said, "We are the 3 young ravens whom you saved from starving, and when we had grown big and heard that you were seeking the golden apple, we flew over the sea to the end of the world, where the tree of life stands, and have brought you the apple." The youth, full of joy, set out homewards, and took the golden apple to the king's beautiful daughter, who had no more excuses left to make. They cut the apple of life in 2 and ate it together. How am I messing up so early? And then her heart became full of love for him, and they lived in undisturbed happiness to a great age. Oh, goodness me. I'm getting my tongue twisters already. It's only the 2nd story. Oh, gosh. Okay, quick break again. Oh, this is a short story. I'll just take a drink of water anyway. Don't say that. You made me like... almost spit out my water. Goodness me. Okay. Right. This one's only a page long. The straw, the coal, and the bean. In a village dwelt a poor old woman who had gathered together a dish of beans and wanted to cook them. So she made a fire on her hearth, and so that it might burn quicker, she lighted it with a handful of straw. When she was emptying the beans into the pan, one dropped without her observing it, and lay on the ground beside a straw. And soon afterwards, a burning coal from the fire leapt down to the two. Then the straw began and said, "Dear friends, from where do you come here?" I should say that. From where do you come here? The coal replied, "I fortunately sprang out of the fire, and if I had not escaped by main force, my death would have been certain. I should have been burnt to ashes." The bean said, "I too have escaped with a whole skin, but if the old woman had got me into the pan, I should have been made into broth without any mercy, like my comrades. And what but better fate would have fallen to my lot," said the straw. "The old woman has destroyed all my brethren in fire and smoke. She seized 60 of them at once and took their lives. I luckily slipped through her fingers." "But what are we to do now?" said the coal. "I think," answered the bean, "that we have so fortunately escaped death, we should keep together like good companions, and lest a new misfortune should overtake us here, we should go away together to a foreign country." The proposition pleased the two others, and they set out their way in company. Soon, however, they came to a little brook, and as there was no bridge or footplank, they did not know how they were going to get over it. The straw hit on a good idea and said, "I will lay myself straight across, and then you can walk over on me as a bridge." The straw therefore stretched itself from one bank to the other, and the coal, who was of an impetuous disposition, tripped quite boldly onto the newly built bridge. But when she had reached the middle, and heard the water rushing beneath her, she was after all afraid, and stood still and ventured no farther. The straw, however, began to burn, broke into pieces, and fell into the stream. The coal slipped after her, hissed when she got into the water, and breathed her last. The bean, who had prudently stayed behind on the shore, could not but laugh at the event, was unable to stop, and laughed so heartily that she burst. It would have been all over for her likewise, if by good fortune a tailor, who was travelling in search of work, had not sat down to rest by the brook. As he had a compassionate heart, he pulled out his needle and thread and sewed her back together. The bean thanked him most prettily, but as a tailor used black thread, all beans since then have a black seam. Oh, that's interesting. What an interesting ending. That was really weird. A yellow? That's the motion picture. Oh, that's cute. Oh my, it's already almost 30 minutes. The time goes fast. Okay, the next story is called The Fisherman and His Wife. I think this is quite long. Yes, it is. Oh my gosh. Okay, it's probably going to be a good 10 minutes. Okay. There was once upon a time a fisherman who lived with his wife in a miserable pigsty close by the sea, and every day he went out fishing. And once he was sitting with his rod, looking at the clear water, his line suddenly went down, far down below, and when he drew it up again, he brought out a large flounder. Then the flounder said to him, Listen, you fisherman, I pray you, let me live. I am no flounder really, but an enchanted prince. What good will it do you to kill me? I should not be good to eat. Put me in the water again and let me go. Come, said the fisherman, there is no need for so many words about it. A fish that can talk, I should certainly... Excuse me, let's go, anyhow. With that, he put him back again into the clear water, and the flounder went to the bottom, leaving a long streak of blood behind him. Then the fisherman got up and went home to his wife in the pigsty. Husband, said the woman, have you caught nothing today? No, said the man. I did catch a flounder who said he was an enchanted prince, so I let him go again. Did you not wish for anything first? Said the woman. No, said the man. What should I wish for? Ah, said the woman, it is surely hard to live always in this dirty pigsty. You might have wished for a small cottage for us. Go back and call him. Tell him we want to have a small cottage, and he will certainly give us that. Ah, said the man, why should I go there again? Why, said the woman, you did catch him and you let him go again. He is sure to do it. Go at once. The man still did not quite like to go, but did not like to oppose his wife, and went to the sea. When he got there, the sea was all green and yellow, and no longer so smooth. So he stood still and said, Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you, here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will. Then the flounder came swimming to him and said, Well, what does she want then? Ah, said the man, I did catch you, and my wife says I really ought to have wished for something. She does not like to live in a wretched pigsty any longer. She would like to have a cottage. Go then, said the flounder, she has it already. When the man went home, his wife was no longer in the pigsty, but instead of it there was a small cottage, and she was sitting on a bench before the door. Then she took him by the hand and said to him, Just come inside, look, isn't this a great deal better? So they went in, and there was a small porch and a pretty little parlour and bedroom, and a kitchen and a pantry, with the best of furniture and fitted up with the most beautiful things made of tin and brass. Whatever was wanted. And behind the cottage there was a small yard with hens and ducks and a little garden with flowers and fruit. Look, said the wife, is that not nice? Yes, said the husband, so we must always think it. Now we will live quite contented. We will think about that, said the wife. With that they ate something and went to bed. Everything went well for a week or a fortnight, and then the woman said, Listen, husband, this cottage is far too small for us, and the garden and the yard are little. The flounder might just as well have given us a larger house. I should like to live in a great stone castle. Go to the flounder and tell him to give us a castle. Ah, wife, said the man, the cottage is quite good enough. Why should we live in a castle? What? Said the woman. Just go there. The flounder can always do that. No, wife, said the man. The flounder has just given us the cottage. I do not like to go back so soon. It might make him angry. Go, said the woman. He can do it quite easily and will be glad to do it. You just go to him. The man's heart grew heavy, and he did not want to go. He said to himself, It is... okay, excuse me, I'm going to go check on the dog. Where was I? Right, so when he came to the sea, the water was quite purple and dark blue, and grey and thick, and no longer so green and yellow, but it was still quiet. And he stood there and said, Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you, here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will. Well, what does she want then? Said the flounder. Alas, said the man, half scared, She wants to live in a great stone castle." "Go to it, then. She is standing before the door," said the flounder. Then the man went away, intending to go home. But when he got there, he found a great stone palace, and his wife was just standing on the steps going in. And she took him by the hand and said, "Come in." So he went in with her, and in the castle was a great hall paved with marble, and many servants, who flung the doors wide. And the walls were all bright with beautiful hangings, and in the rooms were chairs and tables of pure gold, and crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and all the rooms and bedrooms had carpets, and food and wine of the very best was standing on all the tables, so that they nearly broke down beneath it. Behind the house, too, there was a great courtyard, with stables for horses and cows, and the very best of carriages. There was a magnificent large garden, too, with the most beautiful flowers and fruit trees, and a park 1/2 mile long, in which were stags, deers, hares, everything that could be desired. "Come," said the woman, "isn't that beautiful?" "Yes, indeed," said the man. "Now let it be, and we will live in this beautiful castle and be content." "We will consider about that," said the woman, "and sleep upon it." Then they went to bed. The next morning the wife awoke first, and it was just daybreak, and from her bed she saw the beautiful country lying before her. Her husband was still stretching himself, so she poked him in the side with her elbow and said, "Get up, husband, just peep out of the window. Look you, couldn't we be the king over all that land? Go to the flounder, and we will be the king." "Ah, wife," said the man, "why should we be king? I do not want to be king." "Well," said the wife, "if you won't be king, I will. Go to the flounder, for I will be king." "Ah, wife," said the man, "why do you want to be king? I do not want to say that to him." "Why not?" said the woman. "Go to him this instant. I must be king." So the man went and was quite unhappy because his wife wished to be king. "It is not right, it is not right," thought he. He did not wish to go, but yet he went. And when he came to the sea, it was quite dark grey, and the water heaved up from below and smelled putrid. Then he went and stood by it and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you, here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said the man, "she wants to be king." "Go to her, she is king already." So the man went, and when he came to the palace, the castle had become much larger, and had a great tower and magnificent ornaments, and the sentinel was standing before the door, and there were numbers of soldiers with kettledrums and trumpets. And when he went inside the house, everything was of real marble and gold, with velvet covers and great golden tassels. Then the doors of the hall were opened, and there was the court in all its splendour, and his wife was sitting on a high throne of gold and diamonds, with a great crown of gold on her head, and a sceptre of pure gold and jewels in her hand. And both sides of her stood her maids in waiting in a row, each of them always one head shorter than the last. Then he went and stood before her and said, "Ah, wife, and now you are king." "Yes," said the woman, "now I am king." So he stood and looked at her, and when he had looked at her for some time, he said, "And now that you are king, let all else be, for now we will wish for nothing more." "Nay, husband," said the woman, quite anxiously, "I find time passes very heavily. I can bear it no longer. Go to the flounder. I am king, but I must be emperor too." Gosh. "Alas, wife, why do you wish to be emperor?" "Husband," said she, "go to the flounder. I will be emperor." "Alas, wife," said the man, "he cannot make you emperor. I may not say that to the fish. There's only one emperor in the land, and Emperor the flounder cannot make you. I assure you he cannot." "What?" said the woman. "I am the king, and you are nothing but my husband. Will you go this moment? Go at once. If he can make a king, he can make an emperor. I will be emperor. Go instantly." So he was forced to go. As the man went, however, he was troubled in mind, and thought to himself, "It will not end well, it will not end well. Emperor is too shameless. The flounder will at last be tired out." With that he reached the sea, and the sea was quite black and thick, and began to boil up from below, so that it threw up bubbles, and such a sharp wind blew over it that it curdled, and the man was afraid. Then he went and stood by it, and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas, flounder," said he, "my wife wants to be emperor." "Go to her," said the flounder, "she is emperor already." So the man went, and when he got there, the whole palace was made of polished marble, with alabaster figures and golden ornaments, and soldiers were marching before the door, blowing trumpets and beating cymbals and drums, and in the house barons and counts and dukes were going about as servants. Then they opened the doors to him, which were made of pure gold. And when he entered, there sat his wife on a throne, which was made of one piece of gold, and was at least 2 miles high. And she wore a great golden crown that was 3 yards high, and set with diamonds and carbuncles. And in one hand she had the scepter, and in the other the imperial orb. And on both sides of her stood the, what's that word? YEOMEN of the guard in 2 rows, each being smaller than the one before him, from the biggest giant who was 2 miles high to the very smallest dwarf, just as big as my little finger. And before it stood a number of princes and dukes. Then the man went and stood among them and said, "Wife, are you emperor now?" "Yes," said she, "now I am emperor." Then he stood and looked at her well, and when he had looked at her for some time, he said, "Ah, wife, be content now that you are emperor." Oh my gosh, this carries on for another 3 pages. "Husband," said she, "why are you standing there? Now I am emperor, but I will be pope too. Go to the flounder." "Alas, wife," said the man, "what will you not wish for? You cannot be pope. There is but one in Christendom. He cannot make you pope." "Husband," said she, "I will be pope." "Go immediately. I must be pope to this very day." "No, wife," said the man, "I do not want to say that to him. That would not do. This is too much. The flounder cannot make you pope." What is this story? "Husband," said she, "what nonsense! If he can make an emperor, he can make a pope. Go to him directly. I am emperor, and you are nothing but my husband. Will you go at once?" Then he was afraid and went, and he was quite faint, and shivered and shook, and his knees and legs trembled. And a high wind blew over the land, and the clouds flew, and towards evening all grew dark, and the leaves fell from the trees, and the water rose and roared as if it were boiling, and splashed upon the shore. And in the distance he saw ships which were firing guns in distress, pitching and tossing on the waves. And yet in the midst of the sky there was still a bit of blue, though on every side it was as red as in a heavy storm. So, full of despair, he went and stood in much fear, and said, "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you, here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said the man, "she wants to be pope." "Go to her then," said Flounder, "she is pope already." So he went, and when he got there, he saw what seemed to be a large church surrounded by palaces. He pushed his way through the crowd. Inside, however, everything was lighted up with thousands and thousands of candles, and his wife was clad in gold, and she was sitting on a much higher throne, and had 3 golden crowns on, and round about her there was much ecclesiastical splendor, and on both sides of her was a row of candles, the largest of which was as tall as the very tallest tower, down to the very smallest kitchen candle. And all the emperors and kings were on their knees before her, kissing her shoe. "Wife," said the man, and looked attentively at her, "are you now Pope?" "Yes," said she, "I am Pope." So he stood and looked at her, and it was just as if he was looking at the bright sun. When she had stood looking at her for a short time, he said, "Our wife, if you are Pope, do let well enough alone." But she looked as stiff as a post, and did not move or show any signs of life. Then said he, "Wife, now that you are Pope, be satisfied. You cannot become anything greater now." "I will consider about that," said the woman. At this they both went to bed, but she was not satisfied, and her greediness let her have no sleep, for she was continually thinking what there was left for her to be. The man slept well and soundly, for he had run about a great deal during the day, but the woman could not fall asleep at all, and flung herself from one side to the other the whole night through, thinking always what more was left for her to be, but unable to call to mind anything else. At length the sun began to rise, and when the woman saw the red of dawn, she sat up in bed and looked at it. And when through the window she saw the sun thus rising, she said, "Cannot I too order the sun and moon to rise?" "Husband," she said, poking him in the ribs with her elbow, "wake up, go to the flounder, for I wish to be like God is." The man was still half asleep, but he was so horrified that he fell out of bed. He thought that he must have heard wrong, and rubbed his eyes and said, "Alas, wife, what are you saying?" "Husband," said she, "if I can't order the sun and moon to rise, and have to look on and see the moon and sun rising, I can't bear it. I shall not know what it is to have another happy hour unless I can make them rise myself." Then she looked at him so terribly that a shudder ran over him, and said, "Go at once. I wish to be like God." "Alas, wife," said the man, falling on his knees before her, "the flounder cannot do that. He can make an emperor and a pope. I beseech you, go on as you are and be Pope." Then she fell into a rage, and her hair flew wildly about her head, and she cried, "I will not endure this. I'll not bear it any longer. Will you go?" Then he put on his trousers and ran away like a madman. But outside a great storm was raging and blowing so hard that he could scarcely keep his feet. Houses and trees toppled over, the mountains trembled, rocks rolled into the sea, and the sky was pitch black. And it thundered and lightened, and the sea came in with the black waves as high as church towers and mountains, and all with the crests of white foam at the top. Then he cried, but could not hear his own words. "Flounder, flounder in the sea, come, I pray you, here to me, for my wife, good Isabel, has sent me here against my will." "Well, what does she want then?" said the flounder. "Alas," said he, "she wants to be like God." "Go to her, and you will find her back again in the dirty pigsty, and there they are, living still at this very time." That was such a long story. Oh my gosh, my throat hurts reading all that. That's crazy. Why does it seem like the women are like all crazy? Okay, I think we have time for one more story. It's a few pages, 6 pages. Okay, I'll just have a quick break and then we'll read the last story for tonight. I wish to be the flounder. Yes. That would have been so funny if that's what she wished for. Then she could just like wish anything. Gosh, I can't believe that the man just... Why is he so scared of his wife? Goodness me. Actually, all the women I've like run into in real life are kind of scary. I kind of get it. When were these written? I don't know. This is the brothers Grimm. I don't know when they started writing stuff. I just know that this is what do you call it? Copyright free because it's been so long. Women are scary. Okay, Oh, goodness. Right, so the last story that we will be reading today is the Valiant... Is it Valiant? Valiant Little Tailor. One summer's morning, a little tailor was sitting on his table by the window. He was in good spirits and sewed with all his might. Then came a peasant woman down the street crying, "Good jams, cheap! Good jams, cheap!" This rang pleasantly in the tailor's ears, and he stretched his delicate head out of the window and called, "Come up here, dear woman. Here you will get rid of your goods." The woman came up the 3 steps to the tailor with a heavy basket, and he made her unpack all of the pots for him. He inspected all of them, lifted them up, and put his nose to them, and at length said, "The jam seems to be good, so weigh me out 3 ounces, dear woman, and if it comes to 1/4 pound, I will not complain." The woman, who had hoped to find a good sale, gave him what he desired, but went away quite angry and grumbling. "Now, God bless this jam," cried the little tailor, "and give me health and strength." So he brought the bread out of the cupboard, cut himself a piece right across the loaf, and spread the jam over it. "This won't taste bitter," said he, "but I will just finish the jacket before I take a bite." He laid the bread near him, sewed on, and in his joy made bigger and bigger stitches. In the meantime, the smell of the sweet jam ascended to the wall, where the flies were sitting in great numbers, that they were attracted and descended on it in hosts. "Ho, who invited you?" said the little tailor, and drove the unbidden guests away. The flies, however, who understood no words, could not be turned away, but came back again in ever-increasing companies. The little tailor at last lost all patience, and got a bit of cloth from the hole under his work-table, and saying, "Wait, I will give it to you," struck it mercilessly on them. When he drew it away and counted, there lay before him no fewer than 7 dead with legs stretched out. "Are you a fellow of that sort?" said he, and he could not help admiring his own bravery. For what, killing flies? "The whole town shall know of this." Okay, and the little tailor hastened to cut himself a girdle, stitched it, and embroidered on it large letters, 7 at one stroke. "What, the town," he continued, "the whole world shall hear of it," and his heart wagged with joy like a lamb's tail. Oh, goodness me. The tailor put on the girdle and resolved to go forth into the world, because he thought his workshop was too small for his valour. Before he went away, he sought about in the house to see if there was anything which he could take with him. However, he found nothing but old cheese that he put in his pocket. In front of the door he observed a bird which had caught itself in the thicket. It had to go into his pocket with the cheese. Now he took to the road boldly, and as he was light and nimble, he felt no fatigue. The road led him up a mountain, and when he had reached the highest point of it, there sat a powerful giant looking about him quite comfortably. The little tailor went bravely up, spoke to him, and said, "Good day, comrade. So are you sitting there overlooking the widespread world? I am just on my way there and want to try my luck. Have you any inclination to go with me?" The giant looked contemptuously at the tailor and said, "You ragamuffin, you miserable creature." "Oh, indeed," answered the little tailor, and unbuttoned his coat and showed the giant the girdle. "There you may read what kind of a man I am." The giant read 7 at one stroke, and thought that they had been men whom the tailor had killed, and began to feel a little respect for the tiny fellow. Nevertheless, he wished to try him first, and took a stone in his hand and squeezed it together so that the water dropped out of it. "Do that likewise," said the giant, "if you have the strength." "Is that all?" said the tailor. "That is child's play with us," and put his hand into his pocket, brought out the soft cheese, and pressed it until the liquid ran out of it. "Faith," said he, "that was good, wasn't it?" The giant did not know what to say, and could not believe it of the little man. Then the giant picked up a stone and threw it up so high that the eye could scarcely follow it. "Now, little mite of a man, do that likewise." Well thrown, said the tailor, but after all the stone came down to earth again, I will throw you one which shall never come back at all. And he put into his pocket, took out the bird, and threw it in the air. The bird, delighted with its liberty, rose, flew away, and did not come back. How does that shot please you, comrade? Asked the tailor. You can certainly throw, said the giant, but now we will see if you are able to carry anything properly. He took the little tailor to a mighty oak tree which lay there felled on the ground, and said, If you are strong enough, help me to carry the tree out of the forest. Readily, answered the little man. You take the trunk on your shoulders, and I will raise up the branches and twigs. After all, they are the heaviest. The giant took the trunk on his shoulder, but the tailor seated himself on a branch, and the giant could not look round, had to carry away the whole tree and the little tailor to boot. The tailor was quite merry and happy, and whistled the song. 3 tailors rode forth from the gate, as if carrying the tree were child's play. The giant, after he had dragged the heavy burden of the part of the way, could not go further, and cried, Ho, I shall have to let the tree fall. The tailor sprang nimbly down, seized the tree with both arms as if he had been carrying it, and said to the giant, You are such a great fellow, and yet cannot even carry the tree. They went on together, and as they passed a cherry tree, the giant laid hold on top of the tree where the ripest fruit was hanging, bent it down, and put it into the tailor's hand, and bade him eat. But the little tailor was much too weak to hold the tree, and when the giant let it go, it sprang back up again, and the tailor was hurried into the air with it. When he had fallen down again without injury, the giant said, What is this? Have you not strength enough to hold the weak twig? There is no lack of strength, answered the little tailor. Do you think that could be anything to a man who has struck down 7 at one blow? I leapt over the tree because the huntsmen are shooting down there in the thicket. Jump as I did, if you can do it. The giant made an attempt, but could not get over the tree, and remained hanging in the branches, so that in this the tailor also kept the upper hand. The giant said, If you are such a valiant fellow, come with me into a cabin and spend the night with us. The little tailor was willing, and followed him. When they went into the cave, the other giants were sitting there by the fire, and each of them had a roasted sheep in his hand, and was eating it. The little tailor looked round and thought, It is much more spacious here than in my workshop. The giant showed him a bed, and said he was to lie down in it and sleep. The bed, however, was too big for the little tailor, and he did not lie down in it, but crept into a corner. When it was midnight, the giant thought that the little tailor was lying in a sound sleep, so he got up, took a great iron bar, and cut through the bed with one blow, and thought he had given the runt his finishing stroke. With the earliest dawn, the giants went into the forest, and had quite forgotten the little tailor, when all at once he walked up to them quite merrily and boldly. The giants were terrified. They were afraid that he would strike them all dead, and ran away in great hurry. The little tailor went onwards, always following his own pointed nose. After he had walked for a long time, he came to the courtyard of a royal palace, and as he felt weary, he lay down in the grass and fell asleep. While he lay there, the people came and inspected him on all sides, and read on his girdle, 7 at one stroke. Ah, said they, why is the great warrior here in the midst of peace? He must be a mighty lord. They went and announced him to the king, and gave it as their opinion that if war should break out, this would be a weighty and useful man who ought on no account to be allowed to depart. The council pleased the king, and sent one of his courtiers to the tailor to offer him military service when he awoke. The ambassador remained standing by the sleeper, waited until he stretched his limbs and opened his eyes, and then conveyed to him this proposal. For this very reason I have come here, the tailor replied. I am ready to enter the king's service. He was therefore honourably received, and a special dwelling was assigned. The soldiers, however, were set against the little tailor, and wished him 1,000 miles away. "What is to be the end of this?" they said amongst themselves. "If we quarrel with him and he strikes about him, 7 of us will fall at every blow. Not one of us can stand against him." They came therefore to a decision, went to the king, and begged for their dismissal. "We are not prepared," said they, "to stay with a man who kills 7 at one stroke." The king was so sorry that for the sake of one he should lose all his faithful servants. He wished that he never set eyes on the tailor and would willingly get rid of him again. But he did not venture to give him his dismissal, for he dreaded that he should strike him and all his people dead, and place himself on the royal throne. He thought about it for a long time and at last found good counsel. He sent to the little tailor and had informed him that as he was such a great warrior, the king had one request to make with him. In the forest of his country lived 2 giants who caused great mischief with their robbing, murdering, ravaging, and burning, and no one could approach them without putting himself in danger of death. If the tailor conquered and killed these 2 giants, he would give him his only daughter to wed, and half of his kingdom as a dowry. Likewise, 100 horsemen would go with him to assist him. "That would indeed be a fine thing for a man like me," thought the little tailor. "One is not offered a beautiful princess and half a kingdom every day in one's life." "Oh yes," he replied, "I will soon subdue the giants and do not require the help of the 100 horsemen to do it. He who can hit 7 with one blow has no need to be afraid of 2. The little tailor went forth, and 100 horsemen followed him. When he came to the outskirts of the forest, he said to his followers, "Just stay waiting here. I alone will finish off the giants." Then he bounded into the forest and looked about right and left. After a while he perceived both giants. They lay sleeping under a tree and snored so that the branches waved up and down. The little tailor, not idle, gathered 2 pocketfuls of stones and with these climbed up the tree. When he was halfway up, he slipped down by a branch until he just sat above the sleepers, and then let one stone after another fall on the breast of one of the giants. For a long time the giant felt nothing, but at last he awoke, pushed his comrade, and said, "Why are you knocking me?" "You must be dreaming," said the other. "I am not knocking you." They laid themselves down to sleep again, and then the tailor threw a stone down on the second. "What is the meaning of this?" cried the other. "Why are you pelting me?" "I am not pelting you," answered the first, growling. They disputed about it for a time, but as they were weary, they let the matter rest and closed their eyes once more. The little tailor began his game again, picked out the biggest stone, and threw it with all his might on the breast of the first giant. "That is too much," cried he, and sprang up like a madman and pushed his companion against the tree until it shook. The other paid him back in the same coin, and they got into such a rage that they tore up trees and belabored each other so long that they at last both fell down dead on the ground at the same time. Then the little tailor leapt down. "It is a lucky thing," said he, "that they did not tear up the tree on which I was sitting, or I would have had to spring on like another squirrel. But we tailors are nimble." He drew out his sword and gave each of them a couple of thrusts in the breast, and then when he went out to the horsemen and said, "The work is done, I have given both of them their finishing stroke, but it was hard work." They tore up trees in their sore need and defended themselves with them, but all that is to no purpose when a man like myself comes who can kill 7 at one blow. "But are you not wounded?" asked the horseman. "You need not concern yourself about that," answered the tailor. "They have not bent one hair of mine." The horsemen would not believe him and rode into the forest, but there they found the giants swimming in their blood, and all round lay the torn-up trees. The little tailor demanded of the king the promised reward. He, however, repented of his promise and again thought of how he could get rid of the hero. "Before you receive my daughter and half of my kingdom," said he to him, "you must perform one more heroic deed. In the forest roams a unicorn which does great harm, and you must catch it first." "I fear one unicorn still less than 2 giants. 7 at one blow is my kind of affair." He took a rope and an axe with him, went forth into the forest, and again bade those who were sent with him to wait outside. He had to seek long. The unicorn soon came towards him and rushed directly at the tailor, as if it would spear him on his horn without more ceremony. "Softly, softly, it can't be done as quickly as that," said he, and stood still and waited until the animal was quite close, and then sprang nimbly behind the tree. The unicorn ran against the tree with all its strength, and struck its horn so fast in the trunk that it had not enough strength to draw it out again, and thus was caught. "Now I have got him," said the tailor, and came out from behind the tree and put the rope around its neck. And then with an axe he hewed out the horn out of the tree, and when all was ready he led the beast away and took it to the king. The king still would not give him the promised reward, and made a third demand. Before the wedding, the tailor was to catch him a wild boar that made a great havoc in the forest, and the huntsmen should give him their help. "Willingly," said the tailor, "that is child's play." He did not take the huntsmen with him into the forest, and they were very well pleased that he did not, for the wild boar had several times received them in such a manner that they had no inclination to lie in wait for him. When the boar perceived the tailor, it ran at him with foaming mouth and whetted tusks, and was about to throw him to the ground, but the active hero sprang into a chapel which was near, and up to the window at once, and in one bound out again. The boar ran in after him, but the tailor ran round outside and shut the door behind it, and then the raging beast, which was much too heavy and awkward to leap out of the window, was caught. The little tailor called the huntsmen there that they might see the prisoner with their own eyes. The hero went to the king, who was now, whether he liked it or not, obliged to keep his promise, and the king gave him his daughter and half of his kingdom. Had he known that it was no warlike hero, but a little tailor who was standing before him, it would have made his heart even less happy than it was. The wedding was held with great magnificence and small joy, and out of a tailor a king was made. After some time, the young queen heard her husband say in his dreams at night, "Boy, make me a doublet and patch the pantaloons, or else I will wrap the yard measure over your ears." Then she discovered in what state of life the young lord had been born, and next morning complained of her wrongs to her father, and begged him to help her get rid of her husband, who was nothing else but a tailor. The king comforted her and said, "Leave your bedroom door open this night, and my servant shall stand outside, and when he has fallen asleep shall go in, bind him, and take him board on a ship which shall carry him into the wide world." The woman was satisfied with this, but the king's armor-bearer, who had heard all, was friendly with the young lord, and informed him with the whole plot. "I'll put a screw into that business," said the little tailor. At night he went to bed with his wife at the usual time, and when she thought that he had fallen asleep, she got up, opened the door, and lay down again. The little tailor, who was only pretending to be asleep, began to cry out in a clear voice, "Boy, make me that doublet and patch me the pantaloons, or I will wrap the yard measure over your ears. I slayed 7 at one blow. I killed 2 giants. I brought away 1 unicorn and caught a wild boar, and now I am expected to fear those who are standing outside my room." When these men heard the tailor speaking thus, they were overcome by a great dread, and ran as if the wild hunter were behind them, and none of them would venture anything further against him. And so the little tailor was a king, and remained one to the end of his life.